I remember the night when I realized how boundless a father's love can be. The house was dark and quiet, my three children finally asleep in their beds, and I stood in the doorway of each room listening to the soft, even breaths of the people who meant more to me than my own life. James, my eldest, with his arm draped over his pillow just like he did as a toddler. Jenny, my little daydreamer, murmuring faintly as she chased some innocent adventure in her sleep. And baby Cindy, her cherubic face illuminated by the nightlight, her tiny fist clutching the ear of a well-worn stuffed bunny. In moments like that, the depth of my love for them was almost overwhelming. I would die for my children, kill for them if I had to, and live for them no matter what. Every laugh, every scraped knee I kissed, every bedtime story, I cherished it all. They were my world, and nothing would ever come before them, not even my own heartache or pride. As I watched them sleep, a familiar tightness gripped my chest, a mixture of profound love and a sliver of sorrow that I kept buried deep inside. That sorrow was the weight of a secret I knew I would carry to my grave, never to burden their young hearts. I've kept so much from them to protect their happiness. They can never know what happened to our family. They can never know what their mother did, or why she truly left. Those truths are mine alone to bear, an invisible cross on my back, so I remain their rock, their ever-faithful father. By day I smile, cook their pancakes in silly shapes, cheer at soccer games and school plays. By night I lie awake wrestling with memories I can't erase. And yet I'd make the same choice 1,000 times over because their well-being is worth every sacrifice, every lie of omission I've had to tell. In a perfect world, I would have given them a simple, happy childhood free of any dark shadows. I tried. God knows I tried. But life had other plans for us lurking beneath the surface of our idyllic life. One day, a tiny clue from the lips of my babbling toddler started to unravel everything I thought I knew about our family. As a father, you promise to always protect your children. It's a vow I've kept, even when it meant shielding them from the truth about their own mother. I hope they will understand one day that I did it out of love. Some secrets are too painful, too damaging for the ones you cherish most. I gently closed Cindy's door, breathing in the stillness. In that darkness, I swore once more that whatever secret burden I carried, I would carry it gladly, alone, if it meant preserving their innocence. They would wake into morning to a father who loved them more than anything, a father who would move heaven and earth to keep them safe. They would never know the storm that almost tore our family apart, nor the lies that led their mother into the shadows. This story, the one I'm about to tell, is one they will never hear from my lips. It remains locked away in silent sacrifice. A father's love sometimes means walking through hell with a smile, if it means your children never have to. And so, with the hush of midnight as my witness, I shoulder that secret once more, fortified by the love that will forever light my way. Whatever pain lies behind us, my children will only ever know that their father's love for them was limitless, unbreakable, and that it saved us all in the end. An unexpected discovery. It all started with a single word from a toddler's mouth, a word that shattered my comfortable reality. It was a Tuesday afternoon, unremarkable in every way. I had taken the day off work to run some errands and decided to bring along little Cindy for the ride. She was strapped in her car seat behind me, babbling to her stuffed bunny as I drove through our neighborhood. We were stopped at a red light when I heard her tiny voice chirp clearly, "Happy son!" I glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "What was that, sweetie?" I asked with a smile. Cindy giggled and pointed a chubby finger out the window. "A happy son, Daddy," she repeated. I followed her gaze to the corner of Maple and 3rd Street, where a bright sign in front of a building read, "Happy Son Daycare." It was a place we'd passed countless times on drives, a cheerful logo of a grinning sun painted on its facade. Outside, a fenced play yard was visible, dotted with bright plastic slides and tiny tricycles left waiting for toddlers' playtime. My smile faltered as confusion set in. Happy Son? How on earth did my 2-year-old know the name of a daycare she had never attended? I felt a tiny prick of unease. "Happy Son," I echoed, watching her. "Have you been there, honey?" Cindy responded with an excited bounce in her seat. "Play! Happy Son play!" she exclaimed, clapping her little hands. A chill ran through me despite the warm sunlight filling the car. Play? Was she saying she played there? My mind scrambled for an explanation. Maybe they'd walked by during stroller outings and Sarah pointed it out. Perhaps a friend from the park went there and the name stuck in Cindy's mind. But why would that excite her so much? The light turned green. I forced my foot off the brake, heart thudding as I continued driving. In the rearview mirror, Cindy was still smiling and babbling toddler gibberish peppered with that unmistakable phrase, "Happy son." When we got home, I unbuckled Cindy and carried her inside, my thoughts racing. Sarah was in the kitchen chopping vegetables for dinner, and the mouth-watering smell of sautéed garlic filled the air. For a moment, the normalcy of our routine calmed me. I set Cindy down and she toddled off to find her siblings, calling James, Jenny, in her sing-song voice. I walked over and wrapped an arm around Sarah's waist, leaning in to kiss her cheek. "Something smells good," I said, trying to shake off the nagging question in my head. She returned the kiss with a warm smile. "Chicken Alfredo, your favorite. How was your day off with our little troublemaker?" "Good," I replied cautiously. "We got the groceries and stopped by the post office. Oh, and we drove down Maple. Cindy got really excited when we passed that daycare. Happy Son, I think it's called. She even said the name." I kept my tone light, but my eyes were on Sarah's face. For a split second, I thought I saw a falter in her slicing rhythm, the knife stilling on the cutting board. Then Sarah laughed softly. "Did she? That's cute. I've pointed it out a few times on our walks. It has that big smiling sun mural. She probably just picked up the name from me." Her explanation was perfectly reasonable, and she delivered it with such ease that I almost felt silly for bringing it up. "Right, makes sense," I lied, forcing a chuckle. I reached over and popped a slice of red bell pepper in my mouth, busying myself to hide the unease tightening my stomach. Sarah seemed completely unbothered as she went back to chopping, telling me about a sale at the craft store and how we might need to get Cindy new shoes soon because she was outgrowing her current pair. Normal, everyday conversation. Yet, something about the way her eyes had darted ever so briefly when I mentioned the daycare sign. I couldn't shake it. It might have been nothing at all. I told myself I was imagining things. Why on earth would Sarah have any connection to a daycare? She was a stay-at-home mom by choice. We'd talked often about how fortunate we were that she could be home with the kids while I worked. We never had reason to put our children in daycare. Still, Cindy had been so certain. "Happy Son play," she'd said. That night after the kids were asleep, I found myself replaying the scene in my mind. Sarah was curled up in bed beside me, reading a novel under the soft glow of her bedside lamp. I studied her out of the corner of my eye, the gentle crease of concentration on her brow, her chestnut hair falling loosely over her shoulder, the faint smile on her lips at something sweet in her book. She looked so serene, so normal. This was the woman I'd loved for over a decade, the mother of my children, my partner in every way. I felt a twinge of guilt for even entertaining a shadow of suspicion. Everyone has little secrets, right? Little harmless things they keep to themselves. Perhaps, I reasoned, Sarah had taken Cindy to that daycare once or twice just to have a few hours free, maybe to run errands or treat herself to a spa day. She might have kept it from me just to avoid any judgment, knowing how proudly we both spoke of her being home with the kids. If that was it, I could understand. Parenting was exhausting. Maybe she simply needed a break now and then. I rolled onto my side and kissed her goodnight. She responded with a soft hum, eyes still on her book, utterly at ease. I closed my eyes and willed myself to drop the matter. It was a fluke, nothing more, but in the back of my mind, a seed of doubt had been planted, and it was already taking root, quietly waiting for the next hint of sun to make it grow. An idyllic family life. I wasn't always the kind of man who second-guessed his wife. For the better part of our marriage, I would have sworn on my life that Sarah and I had the kind of trust most couples only dream of. We met in our early 20s, both fresh out of college and full of hope. I was a junior designer at a small architecture firm, and she was working in marketing at the time. We literally bumped into each other at a friend's 4th of July barbecue. I spilled half a beer on her sundress, and in my mortified fumbling to help clean it up, we ended up laughing ourselves silly. That laughter never really stopped. From that day on, we were inseparable. Sarah had an energy about her, vibrant and caring, with a smile that could light up any room. She made me feel like the most important person in the world whenever she looked at me. Our courtship was a whirlwind of midnight ice cream runs, spontaneous road trips, and long Sunday mornings tangled up together in bed, talking about our dreams. I proposed on a crisp autumn afternoon under the old oak tree in the park where we'd shared our first kiss. I was nervous as hell. My hands were shaking and I nearly dropped the ring. But the way she said yes and threw her arms around my neck is a moment I'll carry with me forever. We married the next summer in a simple outdoor ceremony by a lake, with just family and a few close friends. I can still feel the squeeze of her hands in mine as we exchanged vows. How I promised to love and cherish her until death do us part, believing with all my heart that nothing could ever come between us. She walked down the aisle barefoot in the grass, glowing with happiness, and I remember thinking I was the luckiest man alive. Our first year of marriage felt like a dream. We rented a tiny apartment then, pinching pennies while I worked my way up at the design firm. Sarah eventually left her marketing job when James was born, and I still remember how she wept tears of joy holding him for the first time. She decided to become the full-time mom. It wasn't an easy decision. Money was tight and she had loved her job, but we both believed having a parent at home was best for our son. I was in awe of how she embraced motherhood. Even at 2 a.m., rocking a fussy baby with bags under her eyes, Sarah would hum lullabies and smile at me like this was exactly where she wanted to be. A few years later, I landed a big promotion and we finally scraped together enough for a down payment on our dream home, a cozy two-story house on a quiet suburban street. It needed work. The kitchen linoleum screamed 1970s and the roof had a persistent leak, but it had a big backyard for the kids to play in, and an extra room that Sarah eagerly claimed as her sewing and craft space. We poured our sweat and weekends into fixing that house up. I remember Sarah painting a mural of a jungle in James's bedroom, balancing on a ladder with a paintbrush tucked behind her ear, giggling when I teased that she had a spot of green on her nose. By the time Jenny came along, our lives were delightfully hectic. 2 kids meant double the chaos and double the joy. Sarah thrived in her role as supermom, making homemade baby food, sewing Halloween costumes by hand, volunteering at James's preschool. I sometimes joke that she made the rest of us parents look bad. She seemed to have endless patience and love to give. I did my best to support her, working long hours to ensure we were comfortable. It gnawed at me sometimes that I wasn't around more for the daily little moments. But Sarah always reassured me that I was doing enough, that I was a great provider and father. Every evening, no matter how tired I would walk through our front door to the sight of my beautiful wife bouncing a baby on her hip or helping James with homework. And I'd feel a surge of gratitude. This was the life we had dreamed of, a stable home filled with love and laughter. We had inside jokes, family traditions, pancakes every Sunday, movie nights on Fridays, and a bond that felt unbreakable. I can still picture her tossing her head back in laughter on a sunny beach vacation, when James and Jenny buried me in sand and she snapped pictures, giggling uncontrollably. Those joyful moments were the tapestry of our life, each one reinforcing how lucky I felt to have such a loving partner. Sure, like any couple, we had our disagreements, petty stuff mostly. I left my socks on the floor, she'd forget to gas up the car. We navigated the usual stresses of raising young kids, sleepless nights, pediatrician visits, tight budgets during the early years. But we weathered everything together. Or so I thought. Looking back, I realize how much I took for granted that our honesty with each other was absolute. I never doubted what she told me. If she said she was taking the kids to the park or out for ice cream, that's exactly where I assumed they went. If she spent a bit more on a new stroller or splurged on organic groceries, I trusted it was within our means. We had joint bank accounts, shared calendars on our phones, and a marriage built, or so I believed, on complete transparency and mutual respect. Our life wasn't perfect, but it was ours and it was happy. At least, I was happy. And I truly believed Sarah was too. She seemed content in the life we'd made. She would often say, during quiet moments on the porch swing after the kids were asleep, that there was nowhere else she'd rather be than right here with me. I believed her wholeheartedly. Why wouldn't I? That's what made the creeping doubt set off by Cindy's innocent words so easy to dismiss at first. It felt almost disloyal to question anything about Sarah. After all, she'd given up so much for our family, her career, her personal time, so that our children could have a nurturing upbringing. If once in a while she needed a break on a Wednesday afternoon, who was I to begrudge her that? By the end of that day, lying in bed listening to Sarah breathe softly beside me, I had nearly convinced myself that the daycare incident was nothing. A misunderstanding. Our life was rock solid. She would never hide something truly significant from me. I closed my eyes with that comforting thought. But comfort can be deceiving. In reality, An unwelcome question had already lodged itself in my subconscious. What else don't I know? Secret Wednesdays. Over the next week, that seed of doubt refused to wither. I found myself watching Sarah a little more closely, noting the way she'd casually mention her plans for the day each morning as I grabbed my briefcase. It struck me that nearly every Wednesday she had the same refrain. We'll just be around the house today, maybe do a grocery run. Or sometimes, I might take Cindy to the park if the weather's nice. Innocent enough, yet now those words gnawed at me. If she was simply home or at the park, why had Cindy recognized a daycare by name? By the following Wednesday, I decided I needed to know for sure. I called in sick to work, heart hammering with a mix of guilt and resolve. Pretending to leave for the office as usual, I kissed Sarah goodbye at 8 a.m., got in my car, and drove down the street. At the first corner out of sight, I pulled over and waited. My palms were sweaty against the steering wheel. I felt like a thief staking out a heist, only I was spying on my own wife. Around 9 a.m., Sarah's car rolled out of our driveway. From my spot half a block away, I saw the unmistakable silhouette of Cindy's pink car seat in the back. I gave them a bit of a head start, then tailed at a cautious distance, adrenaline spiking through my veins. Sure enough, a few turns later, she was heading toward Maple and 3rd, toward Happy Sun Daycare. I parked on a side street and watched as Sarah pulled into the daycare's small lot. She got out, lifting Cindy from her car seat. Even from afar, I could hear my daughter's excited squeal. She recognized where they were. Sarah hefted our toddler on her hip and walked inside the building, disappearing through the door painted with that cheerful sun. My stomach churned. There was no denying it now. Sarah had been lying, not once, but regularly. Every Wednesday, rather than spending the day with our daughter, as I believed, she was dropping Cindy off here. But why? I waited, rigid with tension, for Sarah to reemerge. It took about 10 minutes. When she came back out, she was alone. Cindy was evidently left at the daycare. Sarah hurried to the car with a quick stride, almost as if she was nervous about being watched. I sank lower in my seat as she drove off. She didn't return the way we'd come. Instead, she headed straight through the next intersection, continuing downtown out of our suburban neighborhood. I hesitated only a moment before deciding to follow again. Keeping a few cars between us, I tailed her through the city outskirts. My mind raced with possible explanations. Maybe she had a part-time job she never mentioned, and Wednesday was her shift. Or a class or workshop she was embarrassed to tell me about. My darker fears whispered, or someone she's meeting. After a few miles, her car merged onto the highway leading toward the affluent side of town, where upscale hotels and corporate offices towered. I struggled to keep up without getting too close, and at one point a large delivery truck cut between us. By the time I maneuvered around it, I had lost sight of her silver SUV amid the midday traffic. I cursed under my breath, frantically scanning each exit. Nothing. She was gone. Heart pounding, I pulled into the parking lot of a gas station off the next exit. I felt like I might be sick. Staring at my own reflection in the rearview mirror, I tried to collect myself. At least now I knew for certain that Wednesday mornings were a fade. She was leaving Cindy at daycare, intentionally, and had been doing it behind my back. And she obviously had somewhere specific to be afterward, somewhere important enough to lie about for years. I had to know what it was. After giving myself a minute to breathe, I drove back toward the daycare. My hands trembled on the wheel. Part of me hoped I'd find some innocent explanation. Maybe she joined a weekly book club at a cafe and was too shy to tell me she needed personal time. But deep down, I sensed something far less mundane was going on. I pulled into Happy Sun Daycare's lot around noon, just as some parents were arriving to pick up kids from half-day programs. My heart thudded. I had no plan for what to say or do, but I couldn't leave without more information. Inside, the lobby was painted with bright primary colors and decorated with construction paper art. A friendly-looking middle-aged woman at the reception desk gave me a polite smile. "Hi there. Can I help you?" she asked. I cleared my throat, trying to sound casual. "Yes, I'm Cindy Walker's father. I think she's here today. My wife, Sarah, usually handles drop-off and pickup, but I happened to be in the area and thought I'd stop in to see how she's doing." Recognition lit the woman's face. "Oh, of course. Cindy is just finishing lunch with the other kiddos. Are you here to take her home early?" "Not just yet," I said quickly, improvising. "Actually, I was curious about something. I realized I've never actually been involved with my daughter's daycare routine. How long has she been coming here? The receptionist tilted her head, a hint of curiosity in her expression. I wondered if she could sense the turmoil roiling beneath my calm fade. Cindy's been with us for, let's see. She clicked her mouse and glanced at the computer screen. Looks like she started almost a year ago, coming once a week. Wednesdays, right? I nodded, my mouth dry. Just Wednesdays, yeah. And I swallowed. And before Cindy, did my other kids, James or Jenny, ever attend? She smiled warmly. Oh, yes. We remember the Walkers very well. James was one of our first toddlers when we opened 10 years back. Such a sweet boy. He loved finger painting, if I recall. And Jenny was here a few years later, too. Every Wednesday morning for a while. Your wife has been a loyal client of ours on and off over the years. Always on Wednesdays, I believe, usually just for a few hours. It gives our stay-at-home moms a little break, you know? My head was spinning. I forced a tight-lipped smile. Right, of course, I managed to say. I hoped she couldn't see my shock. 10 years. This had been going on for nearly a decade. Through each of our children's baby and toddler years, Sarah had been routinely leaving them here. While I thought she was home, or at playdates, or mommy and me music class, or wherever else she casually claimed to be on those days. The receptionist continued kindly, perhaps mistaking my stunned silence for concern. Cindy's doing great here. She was a little fussy her first week missing her mommy, but now she's all smiles. And James and Jenny were the same. It's always hardest for the parents, truth be told. But it's wonderful your wife could get a few hours to herself regularly. A lot of parents do that so they don't burn out. Supportive family arrangement. A few hours to herself. The words buzzed in my ears. I gave a stiff nod. Thank you. That makes sense. Would it be all right if I just peeked in on Cindy now? Of course, she chirped, stepping around the desk. They're having story time in the playroom. Come on, I'll show you. She led me down a short hallway decorated with framed photos of laughing children and little handprints in paint. My heart thumped as we stopped at a door with a small window. I peered in. There was my daughter, sitting cross-legged on a rainbow rug with 7 or 8 other toddlers, all of them enraptured by a teacher reading a picture book about a dog and a fire hydrant. Cindy looked content, happy even, clapping along with the others at the story's end. Relief and anguish warred within me. Relief that she was okay. Clearly, this daycare was a safe, nurturing place. Anguish that I was probably the only person in that room who hadn't known she'd be there. I thanked the receptionist and told her I'd let my wife do the usual pickup since I didn't want to disrupt Cindy's routine. She smiled and handed me a parent visitor sticker as a keepsake, completely unaware that my world was tilting off its axis. Back in my car, I gripped the steering wheel and stared blankly at the dashboard. So it was true. Every Wednesday, like clockwork, Sarah had been dropping off our children for a break. But what kind of break? This wasn't just the occasional overwhelmed mom parking her kid at daycare to get a haircut or run errands. This was systematic, consistent. The daycare's records laid it bare nearly every Wednesday for years, and not once had she breathed a word of it to me. Every Wednesday that I kissed her goodbye and went to work, thinking our kids were safely with their mom, they had actually been here. I thought of the times I'd call her during lunch on a Wednesday and she'd answer breathless, telling me she was in the middle of changing a diaper or cleaning up a spill. Lies, all of it. She had been constructing an elaborate fa-aid, and I had never even caught a whiff of deceit. A surge of anger coursed through me, followed by a wave of guilt that made me feel physically ill. I wanted to confront her that very instant, demand an explanation for this huge deception. But I knew I had to be careful. If I tipped my hand without understanding the full extent of what was going on, I might never get the truth. She'd either deny everything or, worse, shut down and retreat further behind whatever wall she'd built. I rubbed my eyes, exhausted despite it being barely past noon. The possibilities churned in my mind. Was she cheating on me? The cliche? Of a bored housewife having an affair while the husband's at work loomed large in my imagination. If so, she had been doing it for years, even through pregnancies and postpartum days. It seemed inconceivable, and yet, what else made sense? Or could she be struggling with something like addiction? An alcoholic binge every Wednesday morning? But no, she was always sober and composed when I came home. Could she have a secret job? Why hide that from me? unless it was something shameful or dangerous. Nothing fit neatly. The Sarah I knew would never betray me. But I had to face facts. The Sarah I knew would also never lie about spending time with our children. I drove home in a daze, careful to arrive at my usual time so as not to arouse suspicion. The rest of that Wednesday passed in a blur. When Sarah returned in the afternoon with Cindy in tow, I pretended to arrive home just after them. I remember walking in, forcing a smile, acting surprised to see Cindy toddling in with her coat. Sarah smiled easily and said, "We went to the park after all, then grabbed lunch. How was work?" Her voice was the picture of normalcy, as if nothing were amiss. I played along, talking about a fictitious project deadline, even as my insides roiled with anger and hurt. That night, I lay beside my wife with a cavernous gap between us in the bed, though physically we were only inches apart. She fell asleep quickly, her breathing deep and steady. I stayed awake for hours staring at the ceiling. The questions that had started as a tiny seedling of doubt were now a tangled briar patch in my mind. I needed answers. And if Sarah wouldn't give them to me willingly, I was determined to find them myself. Over the next days, my life became a quiet investigation. Every free moment while Sarah was out, I scoured the house, rummaging through closets, the attic, even the garage, searching for anything that could explain her deception. I found nothing concrete, just a growing dread. But I hadn't yet looked in her sewing room, the hidden chamber. One Saturday morning, with Sarah and the kids out at the grocery store, I stepped into her sewing room alone for the first time. The room smelled faintly of fabric softener and paper, like muslin and old patterns. Sunlight filtered through the single window, illuminating dust motes in the air. The walls were lined with shelves overflowing with neatly folded fabrics, jars of buttons, and spools of colorful thread. A dress form stood in the corner, wearing the half-finished sundress she'd been making for Jenny. Everything appeared perfectly normal, but my gut told me to search every inch. I started opening drawers in her sewing desk. Bobbins, needles, pin cushions, nothing out of the ordinary. I checked the small closet where she hung finished garments or those in progress. Aside from dresses, a couple of my suits awaiting repair, and Halloween costumes from years past, there was nothing unusual. Kneeling, I ran my hand along the closet floor, pushing aside some storage boxes filled with fabric scraps and old quilting magazines. My fingers brushed the baseboard. Something caught my eye. A tiny scratch on the hardwood floor right by the back wall, partially obscured by the baseboard trim. It looked like the kind of mark left by moving furniture. I stood up, heart beginning to pound. The scratch was near the closet's rear wall. The closet wasn't very deep, perhaps 3 feet. Beyond that wall was supposed to be the garage's interior, but I realized I'd never actually measured. Did this closet perhaps have more space than it seemed? I carefully removed the boxes of fabric scraps from the floor, clearing the space entirely. Then, pressing my palms flat against the back wall, I pushed and probed gently. The dry wall sounded solid, but I noticed the seam of the right side corner didn't align perfectly with the side wall. There was a hairline gap, almost imperceptible, running vertically near the corner. A gap that shouldn't be there if the wall were truly flush. Adrenaline surged through my veins as I wedged my fingertips into that gap. The panel gave, just a fraction of an inch, but enough to confirm my suspicion. This wasn't just a wall, it was a door. A hidden door. My throat was dry as I realized I might finally be standing at the threshold of Sarah's secrets. For a second, fear paralyzed me. Part of me didn't want to see what was on the other side of that panel, but I had to know. I pressed harder, feeling the panel loosen. With a soft pop, a section of the wall about 2 feet wide swung inward, revealing a dark, narrow space beyond the closet. A musty, stale breath of air wafted out, carrying a hint of something unfamiliar. A mix of leather and cold metal. Heart hammering, I reached inside and groped for a light switch. My fingers brushed a small chain dangling from above. I gave it a tug, and a bare bulb flickered to life, illuminating a small concealed space beyond. I stepped through the narrow opening, my pulse thundering in my ears. The space was cramped, no larger than a walk-in closet, hidden between the walls. In the light of a single bulb, I saw a sight that took my breath away. An improvised wardrobe filled with clothes I had never seen before. The clothes hung on rods that stretched along one side of the secret room, but they were nothing like the everyday jeans and cozy sweaters Sarah usually wore, or the conservative blouses and leggings of a busy mom. No, this was a collection of outfits straight out of someone else's closet, or a costume shop, or a fantasy. My eyes scanned them, and each item was more perplexing than the last. A form-fitting black cocktail dress with a plunging neckline, a red leather bustier, and matching skirt. A plaid miniskirt next to a pair of fishnet stockings, neatly draped on a hanger. I saw sequins on a gold mini dress and the bright shine of vinyl on a daring bodysuit. On the floor beneath her were several pairs of high-heeled shoes, stilettos, thigh-high boots, metal sandals with straps, all in a style I had never seen on Sarah at home, let alone in public. It was as if I had stumbled into the wardrobe of a completely different woman. I reached out with a trembling hand and flipped through the hangers. It was hard to breathe. Each outfit seemed like another nail in the coffin of the life I thought I knew. I couldn't reconcile these clothes with the Sarah who gardened in old t-shirts. However, here was proof that she had a secret identity that demanded fancy clothes. On a small shelf above the hanging clothes, I noticed neatly arranged accessories, wigs of different colors, one light, one black, one fiery red, each styled into different lengths and styles. Next to them lay jewelry I had never seen her wear, a choker with metal spikes, a sparkling diamond necklace that looked alarmingly real, and several pairs of dramatic dangling earrings. There was also a range of cosmetics, bold red lipsticks, smoky eyeshadow palettes, false eyelashes, and bottles of dark nail polish. My stomach churned. I felt like an intruder in my own wife's life. Shame, anger, and a bizarre sense of grief washed over me all at once. How long had this chamber been here? Hidden behind the facade of our everyday life? How many times had I sat clueless in the next room while Sarah possibly stood right here, transforming into whoever she became on those Wednesdays? I ran a hand through my hair, trying to think. This secret closet had clearly been curated over years. Sizes varied slightly. Some outfits looked older or more worn than others. Some shoes were scuffed, others practically new. This wasn't a one-time fluke or a phase. It was an entire hidden life's wardrobe. I carefully picked up one of the wigs, the blonde one, and turned it in my hands. The inner lining had a name written in black marker, Celeste. My brow furrowed. Celeste? Was that a name she used? I set it down, hands shaking. Against the opposite wall of the chamber, I saw the dull metallic surface of a large gray safe. It stood about 3 feet high and 2 feet wide, the kind you'd expect to see in a bank or in someone's home office, for valuables. My heart pounded faster. If the clothes were outlandish, what on earth would be inside a locked safe? And locked it must be. Surely she'd secure her deepest secrets. I knelt in front of it, almost expecting an alarm to go off or the door to be impenetrable. But to my astonishment, when I tentatively tried the heavy handle, it turned. With a soft click, the safe opened. She had left it unlocked. Perhaps she never imagined anyone but her would step foot in this hidden room, or maybe in her rush that morning she hadn't bothered to scramble the combination. Either way, it was open now, inviting me to look at its contents. I tugged the heavy door wide. My breath caught as I began to make out the shapes and objects inside. There was so much packed in there, a veritable dragon's hoard that made no sense in context of the life we shared openly. The safe and its treasures. Inside was a trove of valuables, stacks of $100 bills, small gold bars, and pouches of what looked like uncut diamonds. In the back of the safe sat files and notebooks, and on top of them a few USB drives and DVDs in cases. Evidence of something far beyond a simple affair. It boggled my mind that this had been secreted away in my own home. My hands trembled as I reached for a leather-bound book resting on the top shelf of the safe. Embossed in gold on its cover was a single word, accounts. It looked like a ledger. There were also 2 more journals or notebooks stacked beneath it. I hesitated, a part of me terrified of what I would find in those pages. But I knew this was likely the key to understanding everything. Carefully, I picked up the top ledger and opened it to the first page. Ledgers and gold. The pages of the accounts ledger were filled with meticulous handwritten entries in Sarah's neat script. Line after line, date after date, amounts, and cryptic notes. My eyes scanned desperately, trying to make sense of it. On one page, an entry from years ago, Mar 3, 2014, AK visit, $3,500 cash. Deposited $3,000 to safe, $500 retained for expenses. Below it, another. Mar 2014, AK. 3,000 digital 500 Deans dollar cash. Week after week, similar entries, almost always midweek dates. The amounts varied, but they were all significant. Thousands of dollars at a time. Flipping ahead, I saw entries detailing larger windfalls labeled as gifts. June 15th, 2017. Gift from AK, diamond necklace appraised $30,000. Sold via B. Jewelers for $28,000. Proceeds in cash added to safe. July 8th, 2019. Gift from AK. Ferrari 488 GTB. Delivered to consignment dealer. Sold for $240,000. Proceeds converted to 12 gold bars. Stored. My jaw literally dropped as I read that line. A Ferrari. My wife had been given a Ferrari by someone, AK, whoever that was, and I had absolutely no clue. She had sold it and turned it into gold bars, hiding it from me. While I was driving our modest family SUV thinking we were budgeting carefully, she was secretly liquidating an Italian supercar in the shadows. There were other notations of expensive items, designer jewelry, rare art pieces, even 1.5 CT solitaire ring Tiffany's, gifted and later sold. Each time, she dutifully recorded how she converted these luxuries into untraceable assets, cash, gold, or anonymous offshore accounts. Yes, offshore accounts. I found a page listing transfers, Jan 10, 2020. Wired $50,000 to CI. Account, Cayman, from cash reserves. CI presumably meant Cayman Islands. There were several entries like that over the years, funneling chunks of money out of the country, beyond the eyes of tax authorities or law enforcement. Every line I read painted a picture of chilling efficiency. Sarah had been operating like a savvy financier, laundering and safeguarding a fortune I never even knew we had. I thumbed through another notebook from the safe, realizing it was more of a personal journal mixed with ledger notes. In it, some entries were longer, almost reflective. OCT 21, 2015, Arthur. Increased monthly gift to 15 KIs. Says it's to help with family expenses. Guilt is eating at me today. Put 5 KTs into kids' 529 college accounts, anonymously. The rest to gold via usual dealer. Must stay discreet. My breath caught in my chest. Arthur, AK. Had to be Arthur K. Someone who was paying her a monthly gift of $15,000. She even mentioned our kids' college funds. Had she secretly been contributing to them with his money? I had noticed a couple of unexpected bumps in those accounts over the years, but Sarah had attributed them to smart investments she'd made with some of her savings. Apparently, that too was a lie built on illicit funds. I continued reading, skimming for clarity. Entry after entry recorded meetings, visits, payments, mostly tied to initials or first names. AK was by far the most frequent, but there were others, occasional one-offs or shorter series with various initials. It was a rogues gallery of clients, I realized. Clients, my wife had clients. I felt simultaneously sick and furious. This wasn't just an affair, this was a business. A clandestine operation where she sold services. In exchange for huge sums of money and lavish gifts. She had led a double life as, what, an escort, a mistress? I found an entry from a few years back that made my blood run cold. Nav 5 2020 AK, visit, house, midday. Session in guest room, $5,000, sapphire earrings. Reminder, sanitize thoroughly. I pressed my hand to my mouth, horror and disgust twisting inside me. In our home. She had brought this Arthur, whoever he was, into our home, while no one was home, and done God knows what in our guest room for money. Then calmly went back to playing the role of doting wife and mom by evening. A wave of dizziness washed over me. I had to sit down on the floor of the secret room as I continued to flip through the pages, each revelation hammering another nail into the coffin of our marriage as I knew it. The entries went on for years, right up to just weeks ago. The latest lines were recent. Sep 7 2024, final deposit from AK $10. Arthur gone. Arrangements terminated. Sept 14 2024, transferred remainder of safe cash to Cayman accounts. Considering relocation. JK. Suspicion high. I narrowed my eyes. Arthur gone? Relocation? JK suspicion? My mind whirled. Arthur, AK, was gone. Did that mean dead? Or that he ended things? And JK, could that be someone related to Arthur? Perhaps a wife? Jean Kindred popped into my head, a name I vaguely recognized from local news or society pages. Arthur Kindred was a wealthy businessman in our state, I realized, who had recently died. If AK was Arthur Kindred, then JK likely stood for Jean Kindred, his wife. It sounded like Jean had grown suspicious and Sarah was planning to run because of it. I sat there, realization crashing down on me. My wife had been the secret mistress, or dominatrix, or whatever, of a wealthy man, possibly Arthur Kindred, for years. He'd bankrolled her and indirectly our family with lavish gifts and cash. And she had other clients too, though Arthur seemed to be the primary one. She'd built a hidden fortune out of it, diamonds, gold, offshore funds, enough to guarantee our kids' futures and then some. All while I cluelessly believed I was the sole provider. Anger flared hot and bright within me, warring with a deep sense of betrayal and even a weird grief for the life I thought we had. Was anything real? Did she ever love me? Or was I just a convenient cover, the hapless husband providing a veneer of normalcy while she carried on this enterprise? My hands had balled into fists, crumpling the edges of the ledger pages. I forced myself to breathe. This wasn't the time to fall apart. I needed to hold it together at least long enough to get out of this secret room without being caught. Sarah and the kids could return from the store any minute. Swiftly, I put the journals and documents back exactly as I'd found them. My mind was buzzing with information overload, but I had to conceal every trace of my discovery. I tucked the velvet pouches and cash bundles back into position and shut the safe door as I'd found it, unlocked the way she left it. I took a final look around to ensure everything in the hidden chamber was as it was when I entered. Clothes undisturbed, wigs in place, the wall panels seemed just so. Before swinging the panel closed, I snagged one item almost on impulse, a small, unmarked USB flash drive that had been next to the ledger. It was unlabeled and easy to miss, but I noticed it because it was the only drive not tucked into an envelope. Hoping it might contain digital records or evidence, I slipped it into my pocket. Then I switched off the light, backed out of the little chamber, and pressed the wall panel shut until it clicked into its nearly invisible seam. I scrambled out of the sewing room, adrenaline making my whole body tremble. Not a moment too soon, I had just settled into the living room, pretending to flip through a magazine, when I heard the garage door rumble open. Sarah and the kids were home. My heart thundered as she walked in with a bag of groceries in each arm, greeting me with a pleasant, unsuspecting smile. "Feeling better? You looked a bit pale earlier," she said, concerned, as if nothing in the world was amiss. I forced a smile, the taste of betrayal bitter on my tongue. "I'm fine," I managed to say. "Let me help with those bags." As I took the groceries from her, my mind was miles away, reeling from the enormity of what I'd uncovered. There was no going back now. I knew the truth, or enough of it to shatter our lives. The only question was, what the hell was I going to do about it? That night, I couldn't sleep. After what I had discovered, lying next to Sarah in our bed was unbearable. I excused myself by saying that I felt restless and went down to the living room, claiming that I didn't want to disturb her sleep and toss and turn. In reality, I simply couldn't be near her, not when the entries in the ledger were running through my head, and I was imagining what they meant. Around midnight, when I was sure she and the children were asleep, I turned on my laptop. My hands were still shaking when I took the small USB drive out of my pocket. I had no idea what was on it. Financial records, correspondence, something even worse. Considering the DVDs I had seen in the safe, a sick feeling told me that there might be videos or photos that she had kept. I hesitated, my stomach churning. Did I really want to look? But I had to know the full extent of her betrayal, no matter how painful it might be. Taking a deep breath, I plugged the USB drive into the computer and opened the folder. There were several files. Some were spreadsheets, probably duplicates of her financial records or client lists. But what caught my eye were the video files, labeled only with dates. The timestamps spanned years. My heart raced as I clicked on one from late last year. The video opened in our own home. I immediately recognized the floral pattern of the duvet cover in our guest room. The camera was mounted on a tripod at the foot of the bed. Arthur was lying on the bed, at least it had to be him. A distinguished man in his 50s, silver-haired and heavy-set, with a face that I thought I had seen before, perhaps in business magazines or news reports. I felt bile rising in my throat, but I couldn't take my eyes off the screen. Sarah appeared on that screen. Her face was frozen in a confident, almost cruel smile that I couldn't have imagined. This bed was the one my mother slept in when she came to visit last Christmas. And now it was defiled. I quickly rewound the footage, unable to watch more than a few seconds at a time. Towards the end of the video, Sarah was sitting on the edge of the bed, counting a stack of $100 bills. She really did count the money right there, then leaned over and kissed him gently on the forehead, cooing, "Good boy, Arthur. Same time next week." The video ended as she continued counting, and the screen went dark. I slammed the laptop shut and rushed to the kitchen sink, vomiting everything in my stomach. My whole body shook with disgust. It felt like the worst kind of betrayal. Our home had become a playground for her lies, and she had recorded it as if proud or pursuing some twisted goal, perhaps as insurance or blackmail. The thought flashed through my mind that Sarah might have kept these videos as leverage over her clients. Or maybe one of them liked to watch them afterward. I didn't know, and it didn't matter. The fact was, she had them. After rinsing my mouth and splashing water on my face, I collapsed onto the floor, pressing my back against the kitchen cabinets. I wanted to scream, cry, break something, maybe all three at once. But I kept silent, the weight of this awful secret pressing down on me. Upstairs, my children slept innocently, and just above me, my wife, if I could even call her that anymore, lay in our bed as if this were any other night. I wept quietly, tears of anger, hurt, and absolute despair. How was I going to protect my kids from this, from ever knowing that their mother, that she lived this life? If this became public, it would destroy their sweet childhoods, taint every memory. And selfishly, I felt my own world collapsing. The woman I loved had never really existed, had she? She was a character, and I'd fallen for the lie. At some point in those dark hours, as I curled up on the cold kitchen tile, exhaustion overtook me. I might have slept a little, or perhaps just drifted in a haze of misery. I knew one thing for certain by the time dawn's first light crept through the window. I couldn't carry this alone anymore. I needed help. Someone I could trust, who loved me and the kids. Someone who could keep this secret yet help me see through the blinding storm of emotion to figure out what to do next. Steeling myself, I wiped my face and reached for my phone. I sent a text to my older sister, Carrie. "Can we talk? It's urgent." She responded within minutes. "Of course, come over anytime." I had to confide in someone sane, someone outside this nightmare. As terrified as I was to say the awful truth out loud, I knew I couldn't make the next move without outside perspective. Sister's counsel and the dilemma. I arrived at my sister Carrie's house early in the morning, just after sunrise. The drive over was a blur. I barely remember the stoplights or turns. My mind was fixed on the harrowing task ahead, telling someone out loud what had shattered my world. I parked in her driveway and took a moment to steady myself. The quiet suburban street belied the storm inside me. Carrie opened the door before I even rang the bell. Her face was creased with concern, red hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, still in her robe and pajamas. She must have sensed the urgency in my message. "Mike? God, you look awful. Come here." The moment I stepped over the threshold and she shut the door behind me, I fell apart. All the emotions I'd been holding in came rushing out in a tidal wave of sobs. Carrie wrapped her arms around me and held on tight. "It's okay," she murmured, though she had no idea what was wrong yet. Her unconditional comfort just made me cry harder. Eventually, I pulled back, wiping my face with the sleeve of my jacket. "I'm sorry," I croaked. "Don't be," she said firmly. "Sit, please. Whatever it is, we'll handle it. You and me, okay?" We moved to her cozy living room couch. The familiarity of my big sister taking charge eased my frayed nerves a little, but when I tried to speak, the words stuck in my throat. How was I going to even begin? "Your brother's wife is a fraud and a sex worker and has been lying to us all for a decade." The thought of saying it made me want to gag, even though I hadn't done anything wrong. Carrie placed a hand on my knee. "Mike, you're scaring me. Is it Sarah? The kids? Are they okay?" "The kids are fine," I managed. "They're safe. They don't know anything. And I want to keep it that way." She nodded slowly, trying to read my expression. "So this is about Sarah, then?" Did something happen to her? Is she hurt? A bitter laugh escaped me. No, not in the way you'd think. It's what she's done, Carrie. What she's been doing for years. My voice broke. I, I don't even know where to start. Carrie's face hardened with protective worry. Is she having an affair? She asked gently, as if bracing for a typical marital crisis. I almost wished it were that simple. Worse, I whispered. So much worse. Through choked sobs, I confessed everything. Cindy's innocent clue, Sarah's Wednesday disappearances, the trove of cash and diamonds, even the lurid videos. By the end, Carrie looked as if she might be sick. Her eyes were wide with disbelief and disgust. Carrie stood up abruptly and walked a few paces, running her hands through her hair. I... I need a minute, she said, voice shaking. She disappeared into the kitchen and returned with 2 glasses of water. I hadn't realized how dry my throat was until I tried to swallow a sip. For a long moment, we sat in silence except for my ragged breathing. Finally, Carrie spoke, her tone incredulous and angry. That bitch, she spat, startling me. My sister rarely swears. How could she do this to you? To the kids? 10 years? 10 years, Mike? With strangers for money? Under your roof? She was pacing now, fury radiating off her. Her protective instincts had kicked in full force. She was livid on my behalf, and on behalf of her niece and nephews. I rubbed my eyes. They felt like sandpaper. I don't know, I said miserably. I don't know who she is anymore. Maybe I never did. Carrie sat back down next to me and took my hand. Listen to me. You are not to blame for this. Do you hear me? She fooled all of us. You're the victim here, along with those kids. I nodded numbly. Part of me still felt foolish. How had I missed this double life for so long? But I knew she was right. The deception was all Sarah's doing. What are you going to do? Carrie asked softly after a moment, squeezing my hand. Have you confronted her yet? I swallowed hard. No, I can't. Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first. I'm afraid if I confront her head-on, it'll explode. The kids... I have to think of the kids first. She gave me a sad, proud smile. You're a good dad, Mike. Those babies don't deserve any of this, and neither do you. She paused, choosing her words. To be honest, if I were you, I wouldn't give her a chance to lie her way out or cause more damage. Not after what you found. I looked away, unable to meet her gaze. It was so final, spoken out loud. How do I do that? I whispered. She's their mother. She forfeited that title when she chose this, Carrie said bluntly. I'm sorry, but it's true. She walked all over her marriage vows, and she sure as hell hasn't been the mother you and those kids deserved. Not if she's been sneaking men into the house on the sly. Her face softened, seeing my anguish. But I know this is hard. You loved her. Or at least you loved who you thought she was. And she's the mother of your children. Part of you might want to save her somehow. Maybe think it can be fixed. I closed my eyes, tears burning behind my lids. I don't know if I want to save her, I admitted. I want to scream at her, ask her why, how she could destroy our family. I want to hate her, but... My voice cracked. But a part of me still loves the woman I married. Or maybe just the memory of her. I keep asking myself, was I not enough? Why wasn't our life enough for her? Carrie pulled me into a hug again. We sat like that for a long moment, my shoulders shaking. Then she drew back and looked at me with determination. Carrie eventually laid it out in plain terms. Either attempt to fix things with Sarah, or protect myself and the children by letting her go. In my heart, I already knew the answer. I nodded immediately, a fresh tear sliding down my cheek. The second one, that's where I'm leaning, for the kids' sake. If she just goes away, we can control the story. Tell the kids she had to leave for a while because she was sick or something. They're so young. They might not fully understand, but at least they won't know the ugly truth. Carrie gave a sad smile. And you'd be carrying that burden alone. But you're already doing that. If she bolts, I can file for divorce on abandonment, I said quietly, thinking it through. It'd be simpler, quieter. She probably won't even fight it. Carrie nodded. Exactly. No drawn-out court battle, no airing dirty laundry. You'd get full custody, no question. And all that evidence, she gestured vaguely, meaning the ledgers and videos, never has to see the light of day. The kids never have to know. I took a deep, shuddering breath. If she calls or tries to get me to help her, I won't. I won't go after her, I'll let her run. Carrie squeezed my hand, relief and sorrow mingling in her eyes. I think that's the right choice. The only choice, really. Your children come first. Sarah made her bed, now she has to lie in it. Tears slipped down my face again, but this time they were mixed with a strange sense of resolve. A decision had been made. For the sake of my children, I would protect them from their mother's darkness, even if it meant letting the woman I once loved vanish from our lives. I never imagined my life would come to this, I whispered, voice trembling. I know, Carrie said softly, wrapping an arm around me. But you're not alone. We'll get you through it, me and the kids. I promise. As I left her house later that morning, I carried with me a clear purpose. The marriage was over. There was no doubt about that now. My job was to shield my children and salvage what I could from the wreckage. If that meant letting Sarah slip away into exile and never looking back, so be it. I gripped the wheel on the drive home and exhaled slowly. The path ahead wouldn't be easy or pretty, but at least it was a path. And I would walk it for my children, no matter where it led. Divorce and a new beginning. Sarah did, in fact, disappear just as we anticipated. One crisp October morning, about a week after my discovery, I awoke to find a brief note on the kitchen table and my wife gone. The note was painfully short, written in shaky handwriting. Mike, I'm sorry. I had to leave. Please take care of our children. Sarah. That was it. No explanation beyond that apology, no forwarding address. The kids were still asleep upstairs, blissfully unaware that their world had just changed forever. I stood in the dawn light of the kitchen holding that note. Emotions a tempest of anger, relief, and heartbreak. Even after all she'd done, a part of me had hoped for more. A fuller apology, some hint of remorse or love for the children she was abandoning. But perhaps this was all she could muster. In a way, it made it easier to accept. Sarah was truly gone, by her own choice, fleeing whatever fate awaited her. I contacted my sister and with her help, prepared for what came next. We kept the routine as normal as possible that day for the children. James and Jenny went to school as usual. I dropped Cindy at daycare, ironic as that felt, and made arrangements to take some personal time off work so I'd be home when the older two returned. The hard part would be explaining to them that Mom wasn't coming back. That evening, I had to break the news to my children that their mother wouldn't be home for the foreseeable future. I kept the explanation as gentle and simple as I could. Mommy had to go away to get help for herself, but it wasn't because of anything they did. There were many tears. James demanded to know why she left without saying goodbye, and Jenny sobbed in my arms. I did my best to reassure them, telling them over and over that it wasn't their fault, that Mommy loved them, but she couldn't be here right now. I promised I would take care of them no matter what. It was, without question, the hardest conversation of my life. Those were the hardest days of my life, but somehow we pushed through. I became a single father overnight. With Carrie's help and that of a few close friends who only knew that Sarah had left due to a personal crisis, I managed to keep the household together. We all attended a few sessions with a child psychologist who helped James and Jenny process their feelings of confusion and abandonment. The official story was that Mom had gone away because she was very sick in her heart and needed help, and we didn't know when or if she'd be back. In private, I knew she never would. Legally, things were straightforward. By the following year, I was able to file for divorce on grounds of abandonment. With no contest from Sarah, the court granted it swiftly, along with full custody of the children and all marital assets remaining under my care. In the absence of a respondent, it was a quiet, one-sided affair. A judge signed off on the dissolution, and just like that, I was no longer Sarah's husband. 10 years of marriage dissolved without a word from her. I remember standing outside the courthouse on the day it became official. The crisp autumn air carried the distant sounds of city life, and I felt an immense weight lift from my shoulders. I was free. Free of her lies, her shadow, and yet I also grieved silently and deeply for the happy life I thought I had, one that had died without ceremony, in a near-empty courtroom. In the aftermath, I set about rebuilding our lives. I took down most of the photos of Sarah from around the house, boxing them up with every personal belonging she'd left behind. I did allow each child to keep a favorite picture of Mommy in their room if they wanted, but I removed her presence from the rest of the home. It was too painful for me to see her smiling face daily, and I worried constant reminders would only prolong the children's hurt. I quickly and quietly destroyed the hiding places I found with clothes and videos in a metal drum in the backyard, turning the last part of her masquerade into ashes. It was a strangely cathartic purge. I sold Sarah's SUV and a few other joint possessions we no longer needed, putting the money into a trust for the kids. Our home, which ironically had been partly sustained by her secret earnings, still had a mortgage. But with the trove I'd found in the safe, I paid it off in full. Using her ill-gotten gains for something good felt like poetic justice. I also quietly liquidated some of the gold and diamonds bit by bit, funneling the funds into legitimate investments and accounts for the children's education and our future. I kept this all very discreet. No sudden flashy purchases or lifestyle changes that might raise questions. To the outside world, we were simply living modestly and getting by on my salary. Freed from immediate financial worries, I took a chance on starting my own design business. Something I'd always dreamed of but felt too risky before. I poured my energy into it. In the first year, I landed a couple of good contracts that put my firm on the map. The work became a channel for my pain and determination. As the business grew, I brought on a few young designers and moved out of my home office into a proper studio space. The success was deeply satisfying, not just financially, but as proof that I could build something honest and new from the ruins of the past. Emotionally, the new beginning was more complicated. I went through the motions of cutting Sarah out of our day-to-day lives. I changed the locks, updated wills and documents, and over time, found myself speaking of her to the children in the past tense. Our closest friends and family closed ranks around me and the kids. They didn't know details, only Carrie knew the full truth, but their support was unwavering. Invitations to playdates, extra help with school pickups, dinners dropped off on tough days, those gestures carried us through the hardest times. I focused intensely on being both father and mother to my kids. I learned to French braid Jenny's hair for school and to cook James's favorite chicken parm just like Mom used to, or close enough that he gave a sad little smile and ate it heartily. I potty trained Cindy, who would sometimes pat my face with her tiny hand and ask, "Happy, Daddy?" as if checking if I was okay. That would simultaneously break and mend my heart. We established new routines and held on to old traditions. Bit by bit, we healed. Yes, there were nights I still lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering how I missed the signs, feeling anger and hurt surge up again. But whenever those feelings threatened to overwhelm me, I would tiptoe into my children's bedrooms and watch them sleep, much as I had in the beginning of this story. I would remind myself that they were the reason for every difficult choice I'd made, and every lie I'd told to protect them. And in the steady rise and fall of their little chests, I found the strength to keep going. Epilogue. Fates of the Players. It's been a couple of years since those tumultuous events. Life has settled into a new normal for us. Our family, just me, James, Jenny, and Cindy now, has grown stronger and closer, bound by the trials we weathered together. The children are thriving. James is in middle school now, tall and gentle-hearted, with a knack for art and a burgeoning interest in coding. He sometimes helps out at my design studio after school, learning the ropes and offering his often brutally honest critique on which of Dad's building sketches are cool and which are lame. Jenny is 9, bright-eyed and overflowing with creativity, always singing around the house or choreographing little dance shows with her friends. She has her mother's smile and grace, and every time I see it, it's a bittersweet reminder. Little Cindy isn't so little anymore. She started kindergarten. She's an imaginative, giggly child who loves to draw crayon portraits of our family with big hearts around all of us. In her pictures, she still sometimes draws a fourth figure who's away from the others. I never discourage it. That's how she remembers Mom. Distant but loving, like a sun shining from far away. They seldom ask about their mother these days. In the beginning, there were many tearful nights and questions I struggled to answer. But as time passed, they accepted in their own way that Mom isn't here. We keep a few happy memories alive, like how Mommy would sing a silly pancake song every Sunday morning, or how she loved picking flowers with them in the park. In their minds, she's a loved figure who, due to reasons beyond anyone's control, had to leave. I've made sure they know they were loved by her. That is the version of the story I've given them, and they've embraced it with the resilience of youth. As for Sarah, she remains a ghost on the periphery of our lives. Word reached me that she ended up in Mexico, living under an assumed name. She has enough hidden money to live comfortably, I'm sure, but no family or true friends around her. It's a lonely road she chose and likely the price she pays every day. She's never attempted to return, and I doubt she ever will. Jean Kindred carried on gracefully after her husband's death, but I know the betrayal wounded her deeply. She gradually withdrew from many of her social engagements, preferring a quieter life away from prying eyes. We spoke only once more to tie up a loose end, parting with mutual wishes for peace. In that simple exchange, I think we both found a small measure of closure. Two survivors moving on with our separate lives. And what of me? Well, I poured my heart and soul into being the father my kids needed and the man I wanted to be. My design firm flourished modestly. We're not world famous or fabulously wealthy, but we have a steady stream of projects that fulfill me. I've even won a regional design award or two. The success is meaningful, not just because it validates my talent and hard work, but because every brick I lay in this new life is for my children. The income from my firm, combined with the carefully managed savings from Sarah's secret hoard, means James, Jenny, and Cindy will want for nothing essential. I don't spoil them. We still live in the same cozy house, and I'm mindful not to let them grow up entitled. But I know I can send them to college and support their dreams, and that is a comforting thought. Sometimes people ask how I manage as a single dad with such a demanding job, and I just smile and say, with a lot of love and a lot of help. Carrie and I remain extremely close. She's practically a second mother to the kids and an ever-watchful big sister to me. Our friends and even some neighbors have become like extended family. Love finds a way to fill the voids, I've learned, if you let it. In quiet moments, when the kids are in bed and I'm sitting out on our back porch, under the stars, I reflect on the journey that brought us here. I don't shy away from it anymore. I've accepted that my life split open and I had to rebuild it from the ground up. I won't pretend I don't have scars. I do. There are nights I still wake up from dreams where life was as it once was. Sarah and I together, laughing with our children, and for a blissful moment in the darkness, I forget the truth. But the dawn always comes, and with it the reality that life is gone. And that's all right. I've made peace with it. My children will grow up knowing they were deeply loved and protected. They'll know their father was willing to walk through hell for them, because I did. What they won't know are the ugly specifics of why their mother left. Perhaps when they're adults, much older, if they press for answers, I'll share some pieces. Or perhaps not. Maybe it's better if the full truth dies with me. Thus far, neither James nor Jenny has pried beyond the gentle explanation I gave. In their hearts, I think they'd rather hold on to the image of the mom who loved them in their early years than learn of her fall from grace. I can't blame them. As for Sarah's memory, time has a way of sanding down the rough edges. The kids remember the good, her lullabies, her hugs, the way she danced in the kitchen with them. Those are the flashes of her I nurture for them. For myself, I remember both the love and the betrayal, each in its place. I've forgiven her in the sense that I refuse to let bitterness rule me, but I'll never forget. She's the lesson I had to learn the hard way, about trust, about deception, and about what truly matters. In the end, each of us got what was coming, I suppose. Sarah lives with the consequences of her choices, far from home and family. Jean Kindred carries on, respected yet somewhat isolated, having buried both her husband and the truth of his transgressions. And I got a second chance, a chance to rebuild my life on my own terms, to devote myself to the people who matter most, and to shape a future unmarred by lies. The other day, as we were driving home from a weekend beach trip, James and Jenny were playfully bickering in the back seat while Cindy napped, and I caught a glimpse of myself in the rearview mirror. I saw a man who's been through hell and back, yes, but also a man who is content. A man who keeps a light on in his heart for his children so that no darkness will ever dim their world again. I can't predict what lies ahead for us. There will be challenges, triumphs, maybe even new love for me someday when I'm ready, and one day heartbreaks of their own for my kids that I'll help them through. That's life, messy, unpredictable, and beautiful. We survived a storm and came out the other side. And we're okay. Every night I tuck my children into bed and whisper that I love them to the moon and back. Some nights after I close their doors, I add a quiet promise to myself that they will never know the full measure of what I did to shield them, of the secret I keep locked away. I carry that burden so they never have to. I carry it willingly, with a heart full of hope that the future I've built for them, a future free of Wednesday's secrets and hidden chambers, will be bright, honest, and filled only with the love they deserve. The end.